Thank you for joining us on History FM Radio on liveparanormal.com and history.fm. From paranormal to the unexplained history, it all happens here. Looking to enhance your radio experience? Participate in live interactive chat 24/7 with our radio show hosts and other like-minded people on www.liveparanormal.com, the only interactive social chat room supported by full interactive media. Stop by now and join in on the fun.
Welcome to the Cajun Ghost Hunter Chronicles. Today's guest is Martha Hazzard Decker, author of the new book Paranormal Profiling and founder of East Texas Paranormal. Join me as we discuss the do's and don'ts of conducting a successful interview and investigation.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, as we add another episode to the Cajun Ghost Hunter Chronicles. My guest today is author and paranormal investigator Martha Hazzard Decker. Welcome, Martha. Are you there?
I'm here.
Hi, how are you today?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good now that I'm back to the house. It's been a hectic day all day.
I saw on your Facebook page that you were driving around all over the place today, huh?
Yes, I was. I had to. I started out in our Kaufman County at our Poor Farm. The Poor Farm is owned by the county, and it's actually the only pork farm in the United States that's still owned by the government agency that built it. All the rest of them are in private hands. And last year before, it was designated a federal endangered property, and we're working to restore it. There's all kinds of buildings out there. There's, like maybe some activity. So I went from there to hunting down people today to give them papers and say, you've been sued.
Wow. I haven't heard the term poor farm since I used to play the game of life when I was a little kid.
Well, the Poor Farm was, I think, actually closed in the 50s, so it was open in the 1950s and 1800s. Yeah, and it is. It's the only one in the United States still owned by the county.
Wow. Well, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm 5'6", have brown hair. What do you want to know?
Well, how did your background and experience steer you to start paranormal investigation?
Probably because I had odd things happening to me from, a very young age. And then, of course, in my high school years, I had some really odder things happen. And in my early 20s, and just different things all through my life. It's not been a constant thing as far as things that are unexplained, but the unexplained things are pretty weird. And I think that got me interested back in my, I wasn't even in junior high yet when I became interested. And, then it was Uri Geller, Edgar Casey, the Warrens, everything that was there out in the 60s, and I will say by the 60s, late 50s, early 60s, I started getting interested in things, and that continued on, reading everything I could read back then.
Right. Before we get into the heart of your book, I want to mention to the audience that because of your background in multimedia and interviewing people for various shows and for police profiling, you're skeptical about the value of the paranormal shows on television and the many aspects of paranormal investigating that they portray. Would you tell the audience why you feel that way?
Well, I feel that way because of my, like you said, my media background, being a journalist for so many years, being a PIO, which is a public information officer, for probably 20 years between fire department, police department, and the city. I understand how that works. And I work with different shows and different different people off and on.
Uh-huh.
Everybody needs, what they need to remember is it's entertainment. And
Right.
it's entertainment, and it's not there to necessarily educate people. It's there for the networks to make money by selling commercial time. The more, you know, the more interesting the show, the more popular the show, then the more money they get. So people need to remember that it may portray to a certain point some actual things, but the majority of them, it's reality TV, which is scripted, and that things are not always as they seem. You know, it's TV. It's made for entertainment, and I noticed this season more and more of them are putting on there some kind of a little disclaimer about the fact that it is for entertainment. It's not the thing to watch to learn how to do an investigation. When in law enforcement, when I teach training, I tell them, and when I do my presentations with this, it's like I tell them that law enforcement, you don't watch cops what to do, you watch cops to learn what not to do.
Right.
Because
could you give us a short version of the basics of how to conduct an informative, credible interview with a client?
Well, I'll try.
Okay.
I'll try doing a short one, but you know, it's, you ask a lot of questions, but in the beginning, the most important thing, safety-wise, is don't go by yourself. Have somebody with you. It also helps you conduct the investigation better. We use audio, we use video, and we just have it set up. We don't do investigation while we're there to interview, and we 99.9% of the time we'll interview and then decide whether we're going to do an investigation. We rarely go straight to an investigation from a phone call. It has happened, but it's very rare because we want to do our background checks more or less. But you build rapport with them. You turn off your phone. You leave it in the car. You know, you don't sit there and play on your phone, text people back and forth. When you're trying to do the interview, it's rude, and you don't build rapport because they perceive themselves as being a bother to you. You know, you'd rather be elsewhere because you're sitting here and not giving your attention to them. So that's going to shut it down. You don't want people to shut down. You want them to open up. So you build rapport. You know, you come in, you know, hey, how's the weather? You know, what do you think about the Cowboys? You know, you build rapport with people. And probably the biggest thing to do is let them tell their story. Excuse me. Let them tell their story. Don't be super talkative about, you know, oh, we did this and we do that. You know, we throw some things like that in when we do our investigation, but that's like kind of a little bit of the rapport building, and maybe after we're through with the interview to kind of put them at ease. But you focus on them. You have questions that you ask them that if you've ever put someone in jail or you've been put in jail, there are going to be questions that are similar to being booked into jail. You ask things about all kinds of things about them. You know, where you live, where you work. Sometimes, you know, who's an emergency contact. You know, have you ever been arrested? You know, are you on any medication? Are you under a doctor's care? Do you have any mental problems? You know, have you ever thought of suicide? I mean, all kinds of questions like that, because you need to be able to come up with a who, what, where, when.
Well, how can a person's occupation influence the interview or possible investigation?
Well, not necessarily possibly the investigation, but by knowing all this stuff, you're also establishing your potential client and even the witness. The witness, you won't ask those kind of questions. Those would be more for a client. But you're trying to establish the credibility of your client. You don't know if that person is. You don't know if they're telling you the truth. You don't know if if they have mental issues, and then that's the importance of the rapport, because you need that information. They may not want to tell you that they're bipolar or they're schizophrenic or they're depressed or, you know, any of that kind of stuff. Sometimes their occupation, you know, maybe they're they could be any number of things, but it could be they brought something home with them with their work. You know, maybe they don't work. Maybe they're a drug addict.
Right.
Maybe they murdered somebody. You don't know those things, and you're trying to establish possible causes for things, if anything is occurring.
Right.
You're trying to, as best you can, and it's difficult to get the why, but you're looking for some whys when you're asking all these questions. Help you formulate that. You're trying to establish their credibility, and when they tell their story, it's important just to let them tell their story until they're done with it. If they kind of hesitate, if you wait a minute and you don't say anything when they stop, they're going to start talking again, and they're going to give you so much information most of the time. Once they relax, if they trust
right.
you, you want them to trust you, and you need to make sure that you maintain that trust. Almost like you're a doctor, a lawyer.
After they tell you their story, how can you tell if a client is lying to you because they may have an underlying motive for the investigation, such as maybe publicity or a segment on one of the paranormal shows on TV?
Well, that's one of the things when they're telling you the story. They may say, "Oh, it cusses at me," or "I know it's mad," or some things that are very general and broad in their statements. So you go back after they tell their story, because you don't really want to interrupt them, let them go with it. Then you go back in and you tell them, you ask them to define that. What do you mean by mad? I had a lady once I talked to that talked about the young kids that were messing with something. And so my idea of young kids were some kids, that were teenagers. Her idea of young kids, she was in her 70s, they were in their 50s. Those were not young kids. So everybody has different definitions of different things. So you need to understand what their definition is. And you're looking for names. It's like if I stop somebody in a car and I want to do a little interdiction, and it's like, where are you coming from? A friend's house. Or where's your friend live? You're trying to get details to maybe corroborate their story, and you do the same thing with this. You're trying to get the details so you can go back and maybe find some documentation or talk to the neighbor, talk to a witness, and you have this information that can help you, build your interview, build your investigation. And as you go back, if they're not being truthful, and you keep them to, if they have very broad, basic statements, it's easy to lie that way. And that's it. A lot of them, you have to watch now because there's so many shows out there, Paranormal Witness, My Ghost Story, you name it. And they want to be on TV, whether it's, Bigfoot show, something, they're going to, they may make up something, and there may be a little partial truth to it. But if it's something they're making up, they are not going to be able to give you the finite detail. It's going to be kept very, very broad. Like if I ask for that person, where are you coming from a friend's house? Where does your friend live? Down the road. Well, they can't tell you where they were because they really weren't at a friend's house, and they don't know what's down the road. So you're testing for details. You're watching their body language. You're watching their demeanor.
Right. Well, I'm sure you've seen the Dead Files, where a former New York City detective uses his interview skills and detective experience to help document the real-world evidence of a paranormal investigation. What type of research do you recommend to the novice investigator to search for about the site he's investigating to corroborate and verify factual evidence with the paranormal evidence and data they might capture during the investigation?
Ooh, that's a long question.
Well, basically what I'm asking you is, if you came out of a police environment, what research should you do to find the facts before you try to and utilize those facts to verify what you find during your investigation? Like you might be at an old haunted house, an old house that's been there for years, and you go and what sort of information do you look for to verify any sort of paranormal evidence that you collect?
Well, you try to contact former residents, former owners, if it's rent house, see if you can maybe make contact with some of the former tenants. And when you do, you don't go, has anything paranormal happened? But when you're talking to them, it's like, Was there anything odd, anything unusual, anything that made you feel uncomfortable? You keep your statements very broad, or your questions very broad and non-accusatory even on some of them, so that, you know, they might think back, because there may be something that happened that they thought was just kind of odd, but if you put it in a paranormal context, ghost context, they may never tell you because either they don't want to talk about it or they never thought about that. So you do that. You go to the neighbor's house. You know, have you ever noticed anything unusual over there? Has anybody ever said anything? You know, you don't tell them what the potential client has told you. You're looking for, you know, anything somebody else might have. You can, you know, on some cases, you can go to the police department, and you can, in a lot of states, any records to calls to that address are public records. The report, especially in Texas, the reports are public record. You know, you may go to a public information request and want to know, especially if they told you a lot of things that maybe somebody was murdered there, or, you know, different things that might have happened. Go ask for those records. You know, once cases are closed, all that's public info, and you can get that. You can go to the newspaper and look in their morgue. You can go to a genealogy libraries. You can go to libraries in general. You can go to the district clerk's office to, you know, to check in the historical societies, historical commissions, you know, and most of that's all free. So you can do research
Do you
like
have
that.
police
You know,
departments to help with their investigations?
Some of the people I know have done that. We've never had anything like that. Of course, you know, our team is made up of about half of us or so are all current or former law enforcement. And I get people I know, and I get people that I know who are psychics that sometimes will call and tell me that, you know, they think this or happened, and they want to pass on the information, but they don't want them to think, you know, oh, this is another crackpot calling, or they don't want, or the other thing that they're fearful of is that their information is good and correct, and they, you know, when they find the body or they find whatever it is, and then it's like, well, how do you know that? Are you sure you didn't know about it? You didn't murder, you know, and so on. So there have been times where I've been able to make contact as a former law enforcement officer with sometimes somebody I already know and say, hey, I've got this info. They want to remain anonymous. I don't say it's, you know, from a psychic necessarily. I just say, you know, it was an anonymous source. They called me and wanted me to pass, so I'm passing it on.
Right. So you use a medium in your investigation sometimes, is what you're saying.
Well, yeah, with our team we do. We have several mediums on our team, actually.
Oh, cool.
We have Maria Elena Santos down in Houston, who's a psychic medium. We have some people know Dr. Rita Louise. She's on our team. And then we also have Kat Lang that I can use, and of course she's over in Washington, and we'll call her sometimes from locations because she's really good at remote stuff. And we have a blast when we have if I call Kat, because Kat will tell me about the place before I even get there sometimes, or before I've even told her why I'm calling, and she'll give us. We get into a lot of the history if it's older, and she gives me, you know, first names, last names. I mean, so much information that when we go into the place, we can direct specific questions towards individuals. You know, whether they're there or not, we don't know. But instead of going, is anybody here, you can say, you know, Dr. Jones, are you here? There's a place that we've gone to several times that I have a lot of names and a lot of history information. And it was real fascinating the first time, because it was like the first time for them that anybody had addressed them specifically. And you know, I would say, you know, if you ask this is probably going to be the response. Sure enough, that was the response we got. You know, and get online. I mean, you can get online. You can put an address in. You know, you go to Google, especially, you put the address in, and sometimes you can get all kinds of information to check. It's not just Zillow saying it's for sale when it's not, but there's other sites that you can go to, like PIPL.com, and there's a lot of the stuff on there now costs, but it shows you if it costs or if it's free, and it will do a really deep web search, and it'll bring up a lot of the free stuff. Maybe somebody was arrested that lived there several years back, or a number of years ago, or something happened, and you may pull that up from there. I used to use that quite a bit in my work for the state when I was hunting, looking for people.
Wow, that's some great information there. What was your most bizarre request for an investigation that turned out not to be paranormal, and how did you debunk it?
Okay. I have one. It's in my book, too.
Okay.
To a certain point. It's one that was near here, and a lady called me, and she sounded like a crazy woman, a big old crazy woman. You know how you sometimes get ideas of people when you're talking to them, and I thought, this lady is crazy, but she had a child. Anytime children are involved, we try to get over there as quickly as we can, because of the children. So I talked to her. I talked her down. She was calm, and she was saying stuff that didn't sound like it was that bad to me, if it was true. And nothing had happened to anybody. But then, as I'm saying, we'll be over there. This is during the week. We'll be there this weekend, and we'll talk to you. We'll interview you. I said, but until then, everything's fine. Everything's calm. Oh, well, no. I got a bruise. Anything I would say that she didn't have, all of a sudden she had. And so Tammy goes with me. Tamara Bricky, she's one of our team members. She's also a former deputy. And Tammy and I go over there, and it's actually a young woman in her 30s with her 11-year-old child. But they were also living in government housing in a really old, small, dilapidated complex. And so we go up there, and she had kept her journal for me. She watched every paranormal show that is on TV, and I have found the people a lot of times that watch all the shows. If a light explodes, a light explodes when it burns out, it's paranormal. That is the first thing that comes to their mind. It's a demon or something.
Right.
Where like me, that's the last thing I'm going to think of. It's like, oh, the light just blew out. I need to replace it. End of story. So we get in there, and she's talking about demons, running around, or creatures crawling on the walls, spoons dancing on the counter. Her daughter stays in her room because the light gets burned out every time they, put a light bulb in it. Like 27 times they replace it or something crazy. Well, when I go in there into the daughter's room, and sometimes when we do the interviews, we do the audio, the video. Sometimes we'll do a walkthrough with EMF too, because that has debunked some of the problems. So we go into her room, and it's like I said, it's an old complex, and it has this wire hanging out from the ceiling with just the socket. And so it's old wiring, and they're probably putting in a bulb in there over 15 watts or something, so it's going to blow every time they turn it on. I mean, literally, it blows up every time, huh? Yeah. And there was in one of the other closets. That's where the electric box is. Well, there was real high EMF in there. In the other closet, her mom's TV in the other closet was pushed up against the wall, so if her closet door was open, the EMF was even higher in that closet. So, so they turn off the TV, and I show them, look, this is, and because you have all of this in this room, that's what could be causing some of the things you're seeing. They're sleeping in the bedroom. Before we got over there, they found somebody somewhere off a magazine or something, and Mom had been sent oil here, put this oil here, say what you want to happen, not happen, put it in a box, stick it under your pillow, and as soon as you get up in the morning, send it to me through the mail with $29.95, and it'll be taken care of.
Oh, Lord.
So, and they showed the Bibles. They said the Bibles, when they did that in the morning, both the Bibles had been tossed, on the other sides of the room. Well, Tammy and I looked at them very well, and if you really looked at them, and, that's it. You have to look, you have to see what you're looking at. You can see the indentations, the impressions from her fingers, from tearing the pages out of her Bible. I mean, it was, to us, it was very obvious, but someone else might have to look a little bit more. But she made that up, and then she tells me that, and of course it's like, don't you send that, guy that money? That's a big, rip-off thing. And then I talked to her during the week. We decided, okay, we're going to come do an investigation. She was just so freaked out, it seemed, and they were like really close to us, so it wasn't even 15 minutes to get there. So Tammy and I did it, not the rest of the team. She'd left. On a Friday, we came in on a Saturday, and I tell you that was one of those investigations that we went into the apartment armed because of the location and because of the drug deals, and we didn't know who was going to the door and have it slam open and want our gear or something. So we just, that's our law enforcement background. Not that I recommend that to everybody, but that's why it was kind of bizarre. Because nothing happened during our investigation, but before we got there, which was less than a week later, she found some other guys somewhere, I don't know where. I tried to get their names because I actually wanted to file a report on them. They came into the house, told her, no charge, and she didn't have any money. We'll come in and we'll bless the house, we'll clear the apartment, we'll do that with you and smudge you and do all this kind of stuff. So they come in and they're, saying their stuff, putting oil all over everywhere, and they get into her bedroom and they tell her to disrobe. It's like, now we're gonna, take your clothes off. We're gonna clear you. She didn't know who these two guys are, and they told her if her daughter had been 12, they would have had her get naked too. But since she was only 11, they weren't going to do that. Yeah, and then they demanded money afterwards. It's like, these guys are criminals. These guys are crooks. It was probably a good thing her daughter was there. She very well may have been raped if her daughter hadn't been there. That was her saving grace. And of course, we stayed for a while when we did our investigation, and the whole gist of it all was they wanted out of their lease. The maintenance guy quit going into the apartment because she called so much, and I think what finally did it is he went into the closet with the electric box, and while he's in there, they managed to slam the door on him so he can't get out, and he's so freaked out, he won't go in there anymore. And so they were able to get out of their lease.
Wow.
But there was not anything paranormal there at all. And that's,
oh, wow.
some of the stuff, I didn't know if I was going to call Child Protective Services. I didn't know how crazy this woman was, when we're going over there, because that's also something else you kind of need to keep in the back of your head when children are involved. We've had some pretty weird ones with kids.
Gosh. Well, I'm going to step away for a break here, Martha, and we'll be right back. You are listening to History.fm radio on liveparanormal.com, the paranormal's top community. To get your free edition of the Spectral Times, sign up at www.greatbritishghost.com. That's Great British Ghost, all one word, with the ghost plural.com. Now back to my guest, Martha Hazzard Decker, author of Paranormal Profiling. Martha, we're going to take a break from discussing your book for a minute here, and we're going to discuss and play a couple of EVP that you sent me. As my show relishes EVP, which to me is the most compelling evidence an investigator can capture next to seeing or photographing a full-body apparition. Now, you sent me 2 EVPs from a house that your team investigated. And being a spectroscopist, that is like receiving chocolate candy from a candy shop to me. So I had to process and analyze them, if you don't mind. And in this first EVP that you sent me, which I'll call 2A, you said one team member was using the flash on the camera and you can hear his voice at the beginning of the clip. But at the end of the clip, there's a voice that you said wasn't any of your team members. Would you like to tell the audience about this one?
Sure. We were kind of taking a break. We were all in the living room, and we're all sitting around, and this one team member just, he starts taking random pictures, but the camera he's using, you can hear it flash. And we were trying to record at the time, so I sent something to him about that, and then when we played it back, we got what we got.
Oh, okay. All right, well,
Yeah,
I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to play that clip for the audience a few times, okay?
Sure.
Here we go.
Are you a boy? Are you a boy? Are you a boy?
Okay, Martha, now, when I cleaned up and amplified this file, I actually found two sets of EVP. Immediately after the first team member speaks at the beginning there, I captured this voice at the baseline who says, "This is Frank Stafford." And in reverse speech, he says, "I am nothing." So in this clip, you will hear, "This is Frank Stafford. I am nothing." It's a whisper. It's right at the baseline. So I took that loud response at the end of the original file, and I cleaned it up with a filter, and I amplified it. And remarkably, the spirit says, "This is Frank Stafford." And in reverse speech, he says, "I tried to hit." So in this clip I'm going to play here, you're going to hear, "This is Frank Stafford. I tried to hit." You sent me an additional file from that house that I'll call 3A. And in this one, you said there's a loud gibberish at the end of the capture that none of your team members heard at the time of recording, nor do any of them recognize the voice. You want to add anything to that?
Well, no, that's about it. It may have all been during the same time. Both of the EVPs came from the same recorder.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they did come from the same recorder. That was Sam Epps recording that.
And this is really interesting because at the end you hear it's just pure gibberish. I'm going to play it for the audience now.
You like family with us here? You like family with us here?
Of course, I processed this file, and I found two other EVP. And in this first one, which was at the very beginning, I found this voice that said, "They gonna be," in forward speech, and said, "Stroking my knee," in reverse speech. And in this one, you will hear the spirit say, "They gonna be stroking my knee." And in the middle of the file, I captured this voice that said, "We're sucked in." And when I processed the reverse speech, the spirit says, "We're coming back." And I know this is spirit because if it were human speech, the reverse speech would be gibberish. And in this one, you will hear the spirit say, "We are sucked in. We're coming back." What'd you think about that, Martha?
Oh, I'm kind of speechless. I mean,
It's amazing what you can find when you process these things.
Well, that's it.
And lots of times when I go back on my old stuff, I always find something new. It's amazing. It's amazing what spirits can do with and manipulate, electronic devices like that.
Right. Well, and it is. And when I sent it to you, I mean, there was nothing done. It was just the straight stuff, with no manipulation, no nothing to it.
Right.
Because that's kind of what I look for too, are things that we can pick up before there's been any manipulation. And I will tell you, I will tell you, this lady got some interesting EVP on her phone, recording on her phone. There's a male, child that when the man would go to work about, 4 o'clock in the morning, his ride would pick him up. He'd ask him several times, who's that boy in the window? And when we were there, well, obviously we picked up some EVP stuff, but that was all we picked up. And everything was like, things would come up missing in the house, but there was, that was about it. Everybody felt comfortable. And then lately, and I haven't talked to the lady the last couple of months, she had wanted us to come back because she said all of a sudden it took a turn for the worse. And things started getting a little bit rougher at the house. It's an older, old frame house, small frame house right in the middle of a small town, and there's been, all sorts of people living there through the years, and they've all had some kind of something going on. So I guess I need to revisit with her, see if she knows who that person is.
Yeah, I mean, I'd always like to find out, whenever I get names like that, find out if there was anybody that was in the history of the place that might have owned the house or had died there. And you're looking for Frank Stafford. And that sounds like, sounds like a name out of Texas to me. I mean, I used to work in Sugar Land, and I remember Stafford, Texas was right nearby. So
yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah, I'll probably give her a call tonight.
Yeah.
In fact, I wish she was listening. I wish she was listening right
now.
Me
too. I'd like to be on everybody's investigations. I love listening to spirits. Have you or any member of your team ever captured or seen a full or partial body apparition manifest itself during your investigation?
We have. There's a hospital up in far northeast Texas. We've been in it several times, and every time we go there, I pick up some things, and I was going to send you a couple of EVPs from there, but I've been switching computers, and I'm not sure where the file is. It's on there somewhere. But the last time we were there, it's active every time, but this last time I was seeing, not just out of the corner of your eye shadows, but I was seeing full, dark figures. Several of us did. And another place, Kat and I had talked about, and she had given me names of people. A friend of mine up there, Sharon Matthews, had the kids time because it was over Halloween, and they were doing a haunted house in the place to raise money for the volunteer fire department. Well, she's very sensitive. She's a psychic too, and she confirmed the names and the same people that Kat had done. And then we had another person in our group who is sometimes more psychic than other times, picking up on the same stuff too. So it was like we had 3 people, and then I was picking up on some things. There were 4 of us that when we combined later and stuff, it was all the same names, same information, doctors going back and forth. There's a lady on the psychic ward, and when I'm talking to Kat, she's telling me about this lady, and she's telling me her name and talking about she's kind of loony. She's kind of loony, and it wasn't until I got there that it's like, oh, she's talking about the lady in the psych ward. And even the police have seen her. They've gone around after they shut up and would go, leave for the night after the haunted house stuff, and as they're checking to make sure everything's locked, they would see this blonde lady in this hall, in that one wing, and then call back up and say, are you sure everybody's left, because they've seen her. So we've seen it, well, several of us have seen it there. And then I was going to do another investigation. We were off to do an interview first, and Tammy was with me, and we go by this house, but I wanted to go around the corner to the store, the little community country store, because they had a whole bunch of history and pictures, because it was part of the Wells Fargo, the trail. They had the office and everything was, and literally the line ran right through the back of this lady's property. So, and I just kind of wanted to know where her house was, and we passed it on the way. So as we're going down, she lived in a mobile home on top of a hill. There's a couple cars and trucks up there, and as we're going by, I see this man plain as day, over 6 foot tall, kind of your typical stocky Texas rancher guy with his overalls, his straw cowboy hat, and everything, standing up there. And I say to Tammy, I go, and it's like, I don't know why I said that. I said, I hope he doesn't think we're not coming because we're going by, because, he didn't have a clue what we looked like or what I drove. But I saw him, so we would go back and talk to the lady, and we hear all this stuff, and we discover that she and her granddaughter are just beacons because they can see, they can see spirits. They don't talk with spirit, but they can see it. So, they're always seeing things passing through over there. But I asked her, who else lives here? Because that's another question I like to ask, who lives in the house?
Right.
And it was just them. So I asked about the man that was there when I drove by, and she just starts grinning, and she goes, that was my husband, who has been dead for several years. Yeah, and his picture was right there. And that was exactly what I saw.
Wow. That's amazing.
And I didn't have a clue that wasn't a live person when I went by.
Do you ever leave someone in the car outside during an interview in case things go south and you need to call them in for immediate external help?
Do I ever leave who out in the car?
Yeah, do you ever have somebody outside for backup just in case something happens inside the house and you need to call somebody to come in and help you out immediately?
Not generally. We never have done that.
Oh, okay.
If they're there, they're in the house with us.
Right. Okay.
Or wherever. But we have, made some calls if there's been something that's uncomfortable. We've made, I've called Kat before. She's, just kind of on reserve with us, and it's like, how you get somewhere and you feel it's just different over here. It's not a good feeling. It's like somebody doesn't want you there. And I did that. We did that when we were doing the Darby building in Grand Saline, because we were actually called in to work with the city of Grand Saline to investigate several of the city-owned buildings, because there's things that people, employees have seen. And so we were up there, and it's just, I just know it's all of a sudden where it wasn't there, there's just not a good feeling, and then you feel like there's somebody there that doesn't want you there. They're ticked off at you. And then you have over here, like there was one area in front of where the elevators used to be. There's somebody walking back and forth. We keep hearing the wood creak over there, like somebody pacing. So it's like, hey, Kat, you got any take on this? Because I could take Kat, and we've talked about this before, and we haven't done it yet, where I Skype her in, with and let her actually see where we're at, so that she can actually pick up that way. But sometimes I hear you. Text with her. Yeah, just text with her, and it's like, that it's a man that's ticked off. He thinks you're trespassing. You don't belong there. He doesn't understand why you're there, and he doesn't want you there. He says, he wants you to leave because you're trespassing. And it could be the man who had the place had it built, Mr. Darby. It could be the person who I think there was possibly like a casket factory up on that floor at one time. If you think of the late 1800s, early 1900s, they had children up there doing manufacturing, and there were accidents. That building had a fire once, and if you look up where it's exposed from the ceiling and it's open, you can still see the charred timbers up there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and we're going to go back and do more. And, we're still working with the city. My second book is on Grand Saline, and we have some events that we're actually going to host up there in the future.
Right.
Have you ever
come across a demonic possession on any of your investigations?
Not yet, and I work with several groups that we get calls. That's kind of one of our specialties. But so far, every one of them has pretty much turned out to be not demonic.
Right.
Except for that weird one you heard about with hoodoo. But that wasn't really paranormal. That was hoodoo.
Right. Have you ever had to call on a priest to perform a house cleansing?
Not yet. Not yet. I have several that that I'm on speed dial with me. If I need that, they'll come. But we just haven't needed it yet.
Right.
Everything, and we get being called East Texas Paranormal, we get a lot of phone calls from people, and
right.
there's been some questionable places. There's been some that may be possible, but really it's just turned out to be ornery people. They were ornery when they were alive, and just still ornery. And that's
did you ever have a spirit? Did y'all ever contact a spirit in your investigation that followed you home?
No.
Yes?
No, we never have. We say, we usually carry something. We usually carry something, religious, depending on what your religion is. All of us, we say, we'll say
right.
prayers before we go into the investigation. We'll do something like that when we end the investigation, and then, may say something about, you stay here. And none of us have, we take all that kind of serious. And
right.
none of us have had, we're not inviting it home with us. We don't say, you can come home with me or follow me around. It's like, you stay here. You there, me go. And so we have never had any problems.
Well, that was my next question, to know if you ever had any sort of protection of prayers or crystals or anything like that you used in your investigation. Have you ever interviewed a client that was investigating his own residence or had used a Ouija board, and by doing so had stirred up paranormal activity that wouldn't stop, so he decided to call you in?
Yes. We had a lady call us. She was part of a paranormal group. She was also a paramedic. So she, she seemed to be very credible over the phone, you would think. And this is one that we did where we didn't we didn't go do an interview before we went to the house. And she and her husband had been having some trouble, but she's telling me her team had been in there, she had been in there, and but it seemed nobody had gotten hurt or anything, but they just didn't know if it was demonic or what it was, and it just wouldn't go away. So we go over there about an hour from here. We go to the house. I call her on the way to make sure she's there. No answer on the phone. We get to the house. There's no vehicles there. Nobody's answering the door. She's not answering her phone. And we're not really happy right at that point, because all of us took our, weekend day to do this. And so I thought, well, while I'm here, I'm just going to snap a couple pictures, see if we get anything from that. And then we're trying to call her one more time, and her husband walks out the back door of the house, and it's like, who are y'all? I mean, he's like 6'4", and it's like, what are y'all doing? She never told him that she was calling us. She wasn't even living there at the. She wasn't even living there at the time. She was staying with her father. They were separated.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So we talked to him. He called her with a different number, and she came over, and we interviewed them. We did some investigation. We discovered, or we learned, part of the house was pre-Civil War, and so it was a small house. Well, we discovered that the landlord had lived in that house before they did with her husband, and he was very abusive. And he somehow fell out the back door during one of their domestic violence events. He fell out the back door down the stairs and died.
Oh, my goodness.
She took the insurance money and built a nice house next door, and then she rents this place out.
Oh, good Lord.
Well, so while there was we felt like there was some activity, going on there. We felt like there was something there, but what we explained to them is what was happening is they were feeding it. They were arguing with each other. They weren't being abusive, but they were arguing, and the more they argued, the madder they got, the more they were actually feeding whatever was there that whether something was going on with the landlord and her husband, it was abusive, or there was something else there, but it's like they were feeding the negative energy. So the more they fought, the worse it would get. So our suggestion to them was, if you wanted to stay together, you need to go do marriage counseling. And that was our solution.
Yeah, right.
And that was the solution. This is what's going on, and you're actually feeding it, making it worse. You need to stop. Stop the fighting. And they said, it was like, light bulb. So they just kind of chilled. And I don't know if they ever went to marriage counseling or not, but that was probably weird because that was we try to do some aftercare, like try to, give suggestions or give them help or closure or whatever is needed. We don't just go into the investigation and we're gone. But I will say that's the only one that we've ever said you need marriage counseling to fix it.
Well, I want to ask you, after all your years of investigating, what are your personal thoughts about the afterlife? Meaning, do you believe that we all continue on as a spirit and can come back at will to contact our loved ones? Or do you think that the spirits you encounter at your paranormal investigations are just residual related to a traumatic event that occurred?
Well, some of it's not residual because you get reactions, you get responses, you get things. So it's residual. You're not going to get an intelligence type response. Now, what's doing that, I don't necessarily know. It's like, what is a ghost? Is it a ghost like we think of it? Is it something from a different dimension? Is it a jinn? Because we kind of are looking more on some of these things that might be serious, the way of the jinn, because that's a whole other thing. So I just kind of keep an open mind. I believe that, when our body goes, we have soul, we have spirit, we're made up of energy, and the energy doesn't die, it goes somewhere.
Right.
And, until I'm there, I don't really know for sure what is going to happen, but very definitely you go on as energy somewhere.
Right. For the novice investigating teams out there, can you tell them why it's so important for them to have the client sign a contract or waiver?
Sure. It covers the client and it covers you. The waiver that we have them sign, of course, you sign about injuries and things like that, but the most important part of it is it should be up to the client whether any information will be released or no information released or partial information. So that's strictly up to them. And in our release that they do sign, it says we don't want anything out to anybody. Or they say, you can put EVPs, you can put pictures, you can do this, but just don't identify us or the location. And some of the others, like the one where I sent you the EVPs, actually they're like, we don't care, you can tell the world, that's fine with us. And we're not bothered. But some people, they don't want anybody to know for religious reasons or work reasons, whatever the reasons are. And it's very important to go like that. Have them sign that because if they sign it and they say, you can tell whoever, whatever, wherever, and then you've got something on, your website or it shows up on TV or in a book or wherever, and all of a sudden they say, I didn't tell you. Well, you had that release where they signed and they chose what could or couldn't be released. And the same thing is for them. If they said, we don't want anybody to know, and you go and release all their information, you can get sued. So it's protection for both.
So sort of like what's going on right now with the present owner of the house from The Conjuring and the previous owner that wrote the book about it.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, that's bad. That's terrible. But, Martha, we're getting close to the end of the show here, and I want you to go ahead and tell the audience where they can get your book and any other information that you want to throw out there.
Sure. You can the book's available all sorts of places. You can put Paranormal Profiling in a search engine, and it'll pop up. You can go to Amazon. You can go to Barnes & Noble. I don't know exactly when the ebook version is going to be out, but there will be an e-version if you want it for your Kindle or your Nook. It's actually kind of handy to have, and it's small enough that you could take it with you. There's a list of questions in the back to ask people.
Right.
If you're not sure of the questions to ask, you can go to, I have marthadecker.com. I don't have everything on it yet, but if you go to Amazon and you put the book in, I've got my author stuff is all set up, and from there you can see what conferences I'm going to be speaking at, like the radio shows, like I had this one on there, where they can look and see. And, of course, I'm on Facebook. You can put Martha Decker on there for just the regular page, or you can put East Texas Paranormal in there for things, and then I'm also there as Martha Hazzard Decker. Our group website is etxhaunted.com. We will have one with a name with our East Texas Paranormal, but I don't have it up and live yet. So it's etxhaunted.com for that, and you're not going to find anything about clients on there because I just have never gotten around. It hasn't been a priority to put their information out there. These days I may get some of it out, but that's that's not what our big deal is, to get out and post it all out everywhere. Yeah. So those should be some pretty good ways.
Sounds wonderful. Martha, I want to thank you for coming on my show this evening, and I want to wish you well, and I want you to have a good weekend.
Well, you too, and I will. I'm headed Monday down to Galveston for a week.
Oh, sounds like fun.
Yes, and then next Saturday
I used to love to surf down there. I used to live in Baytown for about a year, and I used to love to go surfing down Galveston and Surfside down there.
Yeah, well, a couple of our team members live in Galveston, one in Houston, and that's Terry Jones, T.L. Jones, and she writes paranormal murder mysteries. Her last one was Dark Gift that she did with John Brightman. So we're going down there to do some, author stuff this week.
Oh, great. Well, y'all have fun, and God bless.
Okay, and we will talk later. Thank you. I appreciate
it. Okay, bye.
On. Bye.
Appreciate it. Bye.
Bye.
Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming on, listening in on the show this evening. This concludes another episode of Chronicles. And join me next week as I'll be doing solo, and I'll be reading out of my book. We'll be covering the chapters on T. Frere's Bed and Breakfast in Broussard, Louisiana, and also Rita's Tequila House downtown on Bourbon Street in New Orleans, Louisiana. Everyone have a great weekend, and God bless.